get started. Genesis chapter number 12. Let me put this on silent while I am thinking about it. There we go. Genesis chapter number 12. We introduced the life of Abraham last week. And as we did so, we saw, what was it, God's sovereign choice, God's call on the life of Abraham. We'll look at this idea of covenant, God's promises a little bit more fully. Maybe not next week, perhaps the week after. We saw that here in Genesis chapter number 12. Look with me at verse number 1. Now the Lord said unto Abram, get thee out of thy country and from thy father's house that I will show thee. And I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. I will bless them that bless thee, and curse him that curseth thee, and in thee shall all families of the earth be blessed. I love the way that these verses here provide such a dramatic illustration of the part that God has in choosing and calling us to salvation. Even Paul would pick up those themes there, and we'll look at it probably a little bit here this Sunday morning. In the book of Ephesians, chapter number 1, Paul talks about that choice, uses the word predestination, and we'll look at that topic a little bit more fully here over the next little bit. Some tremendous truth when we consider how, not because of me, not because I deserved it, not because of anything that I had done, but because of God's good grace towards us. He chose us and called us to salvation in Jesus Christ. I know we probably covered way too much ground last week as we tried to survey a little bit of the life of Abraham. I'm going to try to be a little bit more careful of that here going forward. If you came away from our lesson last week thinking, wow, this Abraham fellow sure seems pretty important in the Bible, then you got what I wanted you to get. Many of the things that we looked at, we'll actually start considering some of those things here this evening. We're going to slow way down and spend some time on some of these things. And as we mentioned earlier, Abraham is probably one of the most important characters in the entire Bible, and certainly almost every salvation-related topic that is addressed in the Bible is in some way tied to Abraham, either by way of illustration, by way of doctrine and trying to teach us what it means. I mean, we could talk about we're going to look at justification here over the next couple of weeks, and we can go to Romans 4 and James chapter 2 and see some of those things. We could talk about faith and regeneration. Jesus picks up those themes in John chapter number 8 as he talks about the difference between the physical descendants of Abraham and the spiritual descendants of Abraham. Obviously, what better character are you going to find that speaks of what it looks like to actually live by faith than the individual Abraham? Hebrews chapter number 11, and then beyond all of the different times where Abraham is explicitly mentioned in the context of salvation, there are so many things about his life in the book of Genesis that are perfect illustrations of many of these themes that speak to the reality of who we are in Christ and what God has called us to. We could talk about what it looks like to live in but not of the world. We could talk about sacrifice and worship and devotion. These things, Abraham's life is a perfect witness, a perfect testimony to. And so what I want to try to do here, and we're only going to really start it here this evening. I imagine